And it was tagged recently in another podcast that I listen to faithfully, the Grayman Concept, a good friend of mine named Shammer. And he's actually the reason why we've started this podcast of ours over here at ISOM. He tagged me in one of his recent ones, Living Secure, Navigating Safely in Shared Spaces. And he had a question come into him from an audience member that was able to leave him a voice message. And we have that same feature here at ISOM down in our description box there, or our show notes. And basically it's talking about safety in apartment buildings. And his listener was looking for a bit of advice there. What I can say is that Shammer has covered this extremely well over at the Grayman Concept. We urge you to go over and check that out. Living Secure, Navigating Safely in Shared Spaces. But we will add a couple of things that came to my mind that I think we could probably expand on a little bit more. And a few other things that I think will be helpful in the potential after effect as well. So stick with us. This should be an interesting podcast.
You are now tuned in
An informed state of mind. The main takeaway is that it's stopping happening. 2009, I made the decision to get out. My family, we got out. Well, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to An Informed State of Mind. ISOM over here at the third episode, and this will be a little bit quicker, I think, than the last few we've had. We're probably up in the 40-minute range. Lots to talk about, and like I said in the intro there, the Grayman Concept, he kind of tagged me in something and said, "Hey, Luke, former law enforcement officer, you got something you can add to this?" And Living Secure, Navigating Safely in Shared Spaces was the title of his podcast, and we're gonna title this one "Raising the Drawbridge on Your Castle." So a couple of things that I could add to it is, and like he said, your homeowners association, if you have one, an apartment complexes, anything like that, usually has some type of homeowner association, or there's going to be a superintendent that watches over for an owner, or if it's some type of enterprise owning that. If you own your own, that's going to open up a lot more possibilities for you. There's no doubt about that. And it gives you the ability to potentially change the things in the environment to make you less of a target, which I think is primarily. We want to deter that as much as we can before they even get to our front door. And certainly Shammer had covered off on a lot of that. A couple of things that we'd always said as law enforcement officers is leaving a radio on or a TV on or lights on timers. And these are old tactics, but they do work, and they continue to work. If you're lucky enough, and I say this, if you're lucky enough to have a dog, I'm not suggesting that if you're going to have a dog, it's going to be left home for 8-9 hours a day is healthy for the dog or and is ideal. But again, a dog has proven time and time again to be deterrent, and it doesn't really matter. Okay, and not on the physical scale of the size of the animal, right? The idea is that animal creates that deterrent because it's creating noise, potentially what an intruder doesn't want. And even if an intruder's not worried about the noise, they're worried that someone's going to recognize that as an alert. Hey, that dog doesn't normally bark, or only barks when there's somebody nearby. And maybe a neighbor, like we certainly, or Shammer had talked about in his podcast, making friends with your neighbors is important. Those are points of contact. They're extra sets of eyes. It's free. It doesn't cost you a thing. Again, leaving the radio on or TV on. A radio, like I said, doesn't take a lot of electricity, but it does create the impression that someone may be home, that the home is not vacant. It's potentially occupied or lived in. Dogs and certainly radios being left on are no guarantee. Sometimes they will walk through that. So other things we've even seen in our industry is people actually saying, hey, the neighbor's saying, that's why I keep a fan moving, so it keeps my curtains going. Or they have it actually resting on their front, towards their front door on the inside, with something that'll rattle the door a little bit. Periodically it'll rattle that, and it'll make it seem like there's somebody moving around inside. Great tactic, smart, it seems to have worked. They hadn't gotten broken into, whereas their neighbors had in numerous times, which leads to the next thing. Will Will bad guys target your house twice? If they think they can get away with it twice and you've made no improvements, no visual improvements, they may attempt that. And that has absolutely been known. Coming back to cameras, they are effective. And again, if it does happen, it gives more information. Being careful, of course, with Wi-Fi cameras and ring cameras and such. There is some downsides to that. Do some research on the ups and downs of just that. If you notice a break-in, there's a process that we're going to come into with that as well. There's a lot of things that you want to consider if you've actually come home and you've noticed a break-in. So that's important as well. One other thing I want to just touch base on is when you're making your house bulletproof, so to speak, it can have some downfalls. One of the things is this: while you're making it harder for an intruder or potentially burglar or somebody to breach your home, and if you're not there, or if you're there, this could make it harder for firefighters to get in, medical personnel to get into the home as well. So say you've had a fall in the home, you'd be able to alert somebody, but they come to the door and you've got that, locked up like Fort Knox. It can make the response slower. It's just something to consider. Is there some other way that you can open that up by remote? Then there's those options out there, but it is something that we have seen where we get to the residents to try to render aid. And this is on a paramedic standpoint, certainly a fire department standpoint. Heard lots of stories. They get there and they've got so many different features on the front door, rear door, even some windows that they just can't get into the to the facility with any type of ease, and which is good for the burglar aspect. But again, it puts you at a bit of a disadvantage when it comes down to a speedy response. So again, whether it's a burglar or home invasion, break and enter, there's certainly there is some variations in those. But like I say, it's all the same thing. Someone's actually invading your home, right, or your castle, and so that certainly is a bigger deal that we want to pay attention to. One of the things I want to talk really in depth about, I guess, is, well, once it's happened, you get home, a spouse gets home, one of the kids get home, a neighbor gets there. You're alerted somehow that, hey, we've just had a break-in, right? You're not really sure the timeline. You don't know if they're still in the residence, and this is why we say immediately leave the area, go to a safe space, whether it's a neighbor's, you can kind of lock yourself away. If a distance, for instance, if you want to keep surveillance on the home or just keep continuity so that you can see if somebody's coming out. Maybe you can get some video and so on. If you find somebody coming out, we never advise to confront that individual. It's a choice that could backfire on you terribly. They could be armed. That puts you at a great disadvantage. There could be numerous intruders, and that's something else that you want to look at as well. So again, leaving your home right away, call the police to make a report and see if they can have somebody in the area that can get out there quick. Follow their direction. They may say, we don't have anybody in the area. Is there anybody that you can go through the area with, and to make sure that there's nobody there. Loudly, or yell loudly, certainly, and see if you can clear that home. And once you've done that, again, and by the direction of the police, they're going to guide you with this. Once you do get back into the home, we're going to want to do something, so carefully. You're looking for broken glass, anything that might fall, right? Because something has been ransacked, for instance. Is there animals that we got to go out and find? Are they scared? Are they in the home? Encourage, if you've left the home as well, and if a neighbor says, hey, I'll go in and have a look for you, maybe discourage that until you know that you've been given the direction by the police to go ahead and do that, okay? Again, we want to make sure that everybody's safe and that the area is clear and safe to go back into the residence. And that, of course, law enforcement officers are going to do that if they arrive with some tactics, of course, involved there. Once it's clear to go back in again, and again, instructed by police, we want to take an inventory of stolen or damaged items and take copious amounts of pictures, right? Write some notes down, take a video, take numerous videos, and see what's happening there. See if anybody found out, had found anything out of the ordinary throughout the day. Talk to them, see if they can give you some information and details in case the police haven't arrived. Write their name down, provide that, ask them if they're interested in just speaking with the police real quick, and if that's not the case, you can advise, hey, I know my neighbor's seen something, but it doesn't look like they really want to talk. Let them know maybe they've got another tactic to get them to loosen up a bit. And sometimes people are more comfortable just talking to police about it, especially if you don't got a good relationship or any relationship with that neighbor or witness, whoever that might be. And we always hope, certainly, that somebody has a camera in the area, whether it's across the street, street or anything of that nature. It just gives officers a lot more to go on when it comes down. Remember to follow up with the police. See what's going on, any new information that you might think of later on or it's come to light. Make sure that you follow up. Get a case file number, okay? When you do call in, before you disregard or discontinue that phone call and the initial call, make sure you grab a file number. That's important. Next thing we're going to do is potentially be calling your banks. If you think that, and even if you don't remember, it might be good to put some of your things on hold until you can kind of verify that, yeah, I do have an accountability of all the files that are important to me. If you've got any weapons in the house that seem to be missing, you need to report those straight away. And that's certainly a lawful obligation as well as a responsible obligation to do that. At least it is in Canada, and maybe some states, somebody will say, well, I don't have to do that here. Well, I would have a hard time believing that, but nevertheless, and you want to let people know if somebody especially has got a firearm out of your home, because you don't want that firearm used in some kind of legal activity. And like I said, if we can mitigate that, then that is certainly important. If it comes down to it, you may even want to change your bank pins. You just, like I said, we've seen cards and what have you, and if you can't get on the phone with that, at least maybe go on your app and maybe you can change a pin off right away onto something. And maybe you've got a couple of cards, one you store away in the house, but they've got, their linked accounts. So maybe you can change the pin number without putting a hold on it. That's just another thing you can do. Again, take care of yourself and your family, your pets, make sure that everybody's okay. Follow up with that. Make sure that if you've got young children, this hasn't touched them in a really negative way, because this can linger, even with spouses, for instance. A short story. There was a lady who had come home. The house was not ransacked by any means, but it was broken into, and the only thing that the offender had gotten into was the liquor cabinet. It didn't even look like they got into the jewelry box, which kind of signified that it was probably young people. And as it turned out, it was a good guess, and it was young people that had gotten in. So, like I say, but this point, it created such a state of mind for her going forward that she could not go back home on her own without calling her spouse when she was out in the driveway, and then stayed on the phone with them until she cleared the house, making sure that everything was fine. And then once she was satisfied that, they discontinued the phone call. And this lasted for years. And so that's a lasting effect that can take place, and a lot of people don't really consider that. Talk with friends and family about it. Talk with a counselor about it. Seek help if it's really disturbing you, without a doubt. Make some considerations. It shouldn't control your life. If this is a prominent problem in your area, consider moving. Start to make that change. And we talk about that all the time. Once you're given new information, like, hey, I'm now a target for some reason, or I've been a target, and I just don't think I can fix it any more than I have. I had a camera, I had a dog, I had these things, and they still seem to walk through it. They didn't really care about that, and nobody seemed to hear anything. It might be time to consider moving. Might be able to not to be able to do that this month, but that's, say, a year plan. We're going to do what we need to do to protect ourselves, bring up that drawbridge on our castle for the time being, and secure ourselves, but maybe it's time to actually move out of the area. That's also something that a lot of people kind of stop short with. It's kind of like living in Hurricane Alley and just keep rebuilding, and this is the fifth time in your lifetime that you've had to do something like that. To me, and I get it, and there could be a huge conversation on why people don't leave a particular area or even a particular plot of land. But in my opinion, there would be not much that will allow me to stay there. But it's something to consider. And again, if your neighbors aren't aware of it, let them know that there has been break-ins. Be a good neighbor. Let them know that this is what's on the go, and this is what's happened with us. You don't have to go into a lot of detail, and maybe you shouldn't go into a lot of detail of what was taken per se, but just let them know that we did have a break-in, and you can leave it as simple as that. And you say numerous things, and the police are looking into it, and let them know that. You can also let people know if it was maybe in a local area, that information might get back that, hey, yeah, you've definitively not ignored it. You've called the police, they're involved, and that could safeguard against maybe an additional break-in later down the road. And like I said, stranger things can happen. So it's about all I can really add as far as, just touching base on a couple different things. Like I said, Shammer had done a fantastic job of hitting all the really key points and went into a lot of detail. So, I say good for him on that. And thanks, Shammer. I really appreciate you tagging me in that. And hopefully between his podcast and my podcast on this, you can keep things a little bit safer. And we want to make sure we can do that. I want to step back real quick to environmental controls. And again, if you can, add additional lighting, that can improve just a tremendous amount. It takes away anonymity, and it takes away privacy. And this is what we want to do by removing any kind of hedges. And if you're on the ground floor, for instance, of an apartment, maybe removing hedges that provides that privacy or clear sight lines and what have you, that can certainly make some improvements as well. So that if you're in the home and hearing something, you can see things a little more clearly. And if you're in a position and certainly a state that allows, and you'll be able to see what's coming, so that you're able to defend yourself a little bit better, and however that may come to you. So again, if you've got any questions, comments, or concerns on that, certainly reach out to us at informedstateofmind at gmail.com, and certainly a few other platforms, X, of course, and we're also posting over there on YouTube. And again, YouTube is nice because you can really have some detailed conversations with other folks. And again, when we bring other folks into it by sharing and subscribing and sending off that notification bell on all the platforms, you'll know we've uploaded something. And like I say, we hope that reaches everywhere really well. So once again, thanks, Shammer. Appreciate that. And like I said, ladies and gentlemen, consider everything. And we'll talk to you next time. Take care. This has been a Rush Creek production.